So a little bit about me. Like I said, my name's Meg. I live here in DC with my husband and our small zoo of pets. I'm originally from New Jersey, which is probably popping out in certain moments as I'm talking right now. I went to the University of Maryland at College Park, and that's kind of how I landed here in DC. If you don't know, University of Maryland is basically in the DC suburbs and is actually metro accessible into the city, which was really cool because it allowed me to have the experience of a large university while still having access to a major city, especially one, the epicenter of government, which is what I studied. My love of politics actually goes pretty far back. I always tell the story of my grandmother, who I lived with growing up, was a huge Kennedy, still is a huge Kennedy family fan. And the first election she could ever vote in was actually for President Kennedy. And she wrote to him telling him that that was her first election after he won. And she actually received a letter back from the White House, just like a classic note from a president. And that was hanging up in my family home growing up. So my values were always what they are, but my love of politics is also always ingrained. But funny enough, I actually didn't initially plan to study politics. I went to the University of Maryland as an American history major because I loved the movie National Treasure, and I really wanted to be the like blonde love interest, not because of Nicolas Cage, but because I just thought she was so cool and so smart, and she had that like historical quarter collection that I still aspire to have to this day. What was I saying? Oh, so it was the fall of 2012, and I just found myself absolutely inhaling any and all information I could about the presidential campaign that was happening. And now I was a big Obama fan. I actually got to attend his 2009 inauguration with like a nerd camp that I got into that brought us all down here to DC. So again, my love of politics goes pretty far back, and was already a pretty big President Obama or Senator Obama fan, and then eventually President Obama. And so when I was a college freshman and he was running for re-election, I was just obsessed. I was watching all of the footage I could, and I said to myself, if I love this stuff so much, why don't I study it? I'm going to school just outside the nation's capital. The University of Maryland has an incredible government and politics program, and I decided to double major. While I was in school, I got credit for different internships. So I had both experience on the campaign side as well as an internship on Capitol Hill before I graduated. And while the campaign stuff was really important and I was really glad I got to do it and experience it, I just knew that Capitol Hill was where I wanted to be. So I was a dance kid, so I wear a lot of makeup. I am going on a date night with my husband, so that's why it's a little heavy-handed, but I would say in general, my makeup is very trust the process. So I graduated in the spring of 2016. We're now in past the primary. We are in the height of Secretary Clinton's presidential campaign. I have always been a big Hillary fan. I was on her wagon from the second she announced it, and my grandmother sent me the link on Facebook because she actually saw it first and sent it to me over a basic message. So while I had been interning on Capitol Hill and wanted to work there, kind of what happens during a presidential election year is it kind of shuts down. And I don't mean nothing happens, but it gets really quiet. And by quiet, I mean the work slows down because the focus is, of course, on the campaigns. And a lot of people leave the Hill either permanently or just temporarily to go work the presidential campaign or the numerous Senate and House campaigns that also happen during a presidential election year. And so what I was being told as I was just applying and applying and applying to all these Hill jobs is like there's more or less a hiring freeze during presidential election years. Like nothing official, and of course there's like some jobs that need to be filled, but all the advice I was getting was to go work the campaign, and then once Hillary wins, there's gonna be all these jobs opened up, and come back in the fall or in early 2017 and get a job then. So that's what I did. I interviewed for a couple different jobs, and I ended up getting a position with the same county level organization that I had interned with in college back home in New Jersey. And from like the summer of 2016 through election day, I worked county level politics, and it was really cool. I am such a nerd and so cheesy, but I always say that all politics is local, and so I'm glad I got my start there. Unfortunately, as we all know how 2016 ended, because Hillary underperformed nationally and in the state of New Jersey, the candidates that I worked for also lost. So that was tough. So I always say I spent the day after the 2016 election in a growl fit on my couch, my parents' couch actually, eating Nutella out of a jar and watching Hillary's concession speech. And then I packed up my 2003 Dodge Stratus with whatever I owned, and I moved to DC. I knew this is where I wanted to be in general. I also just felt like I really needed to be here as we entered the unknown of the first Trump administration. I hate saying first Trump administration, insinuating there's going to be a second one, because there is. Whatever. So yeah, I packed up and moved to DC. No job, no idea what I was gonna do for a job, but I was lucky because my then boyfriend, now husband, so it all worked out, was working down here, and so I basically squatted with him for a few months while I applied in what I called Operation Job Hunt 1.0, and basically was a professional interviewer just trying to get a job in a now extremely competitive, for folks in the Democratic world, DC, as tons of people were leaving the Obama White House and looking for jobs on Capitol Hill, off the Hill, and had a lot more experience than I did. So I spent like the first half, actually majority, of 2017 in a couple of different jobs. I did some work in the public affairs sphere. I did some work at a nonprofit, but the whole time I was absolutely dead set on getting back on Capitol Hill. I also moonlit as a ghost tour guide. That's a whole different conversation that we can have, but that was really fun and a great side hustle, because something people don't talk about here in DC a lot, but it's true, is like the side hustle is real, and most people, especially young folks here, have a side job because you just have to be able to afford this city. Am I gonna do a winged eyeliner on camera? Oh my god, I never wiped off any of my powder. Hold on. Oh my god. Okay, so much better. I was like, why do I look so pale? And then I realized I didn't wipe off any of my setting powder, so that's better. Now I'm gonna do winged eyeliner on camera, so wish me luck. But what was I saying? Oh, so I did a couple of random-ish, but still politically adjacent jobs throughout 2017, while still continuing to apply and seek working on the Hill, because I just like really knew that's where I wanted to be. And so you just had to be like really resilient. I think in Operation Job Hunt 1, 2, and 3, which is like really how many tries it took me to get on the Hill, I must have applied to like over 250 jobs, most of which I never heard back from, which is just the reality, and even more of which I didn't get. Then in November of 2017, I got my dream job. I was hired as a deputy scheduler in the Senate for a member I highly respect and enjoyed the work that she did. And so I was just so grateful that after literally a full year following the 2016 election, I got to work on Capitol Hill. Now that was 7 years ago, which is crazy. In that time, I have did stay in the same office, but I am lucky enough that I got promoted twice, kind of a very natural progression of timelines of getting promoted, and I was just constantly seeing growth, and that is one of the reasons I stayed so long, even though a lot of people don't stay on the Hill, or at least in one specific office for that long. But I was just very lucky to be in a really great office that continued to offer me growth opportunities. But I think while it's crazy that that was 7 years ago, I can only imagine Who's Afraid of Little Old Me just started playing, which is a song that has really resonated with me recently. But looking back on the last 7 years and everything I've gotten to do and experience on the Hill, I just know, oh, that really burned. I just know that the 24-year-old girl, fresh 24, I just turned 24 the month before I started on the Hill, that walked on the Capitol Hill in 2017 would be so proud of the 31-year-old woman sitting here now who, while working on the Hill, got engaged, got promoted, began working during in a new position during a global pandemic, postponed her wedding due to that global pandemic, survived an attempted coup while her husband, fiance at the time, defended our democracy as a police officer on that day, who worked a re-election campaign of her boss, who got promoted again after they won that re-election campaign and got to work in a leadership office, and who got to experience the absolute thrill and journey that was the Harris Walls campaign. I just know she would be so proud, knowing everything I've gotten to see and do and experience.